Special releases are pretty common in Beyblade. However, Beyblade X has taken them to a much higher level than normal, and honestly, it's been pretty annoying. So for a lot of this video, I want to go ahead and draw a comparison to other gens and just show the literal proof of how X has been with this stuff. Also, I'm not going to account for Hasbro or re-releases of these parts. I'll talk about that later, but just for the sake of this discussion right now, I'll be avoiding that. And also, while I'm mainly going to be covering, unique motifs or evolutions that are only in some kind of special release, there are a lot of variants or just weird things I will also include. In my opinion, this actually helps out X, even though it's still the worst overall with this stuff. And when I say special release, I'm not counting things like WBBA Store or B4 Store exclusives, or like the remake that we saw in Burst or X. These are all pretty widely accessible, so I think it's fair to just skip these. So anyways, let's go back to Bakuten Shoot Beyblade. By the way, I'm not an expert in this. Hopefully I have everything right here. And I also don't really have many Bakuten bays, so I will have to go through images through this rather than my usual setup. So first we have the Korokoro bays. I believe all of these were Korokoro mail order bays. There's quite a few of them. We have 7 of them. Gaia Dragoon, Guardian Trigger, Uriel / Wolborg 3. This is one bay, but it's just kind of a weird case. Spike Lizard, Cyber Dragoon Battle Spec, Night Trigger, and Desert Sphinxer. So quite a few bays to have to obtain through Korokoro, not good. And this is actually the worst we've ever seen it with Korokoro in particular, but there weren't too many other bays outside of these, only being 2. These came with movies, so it's a little bit more accessible but still not ideal, these being Dark Dragoon and Dark Gaia Dragoon. So Bakuten Shoot has a total of 9 bays locked in these kind of special, difficult to get releases. It's not too many, and some of these do feel like variants, not full-on unique bays or anything. But I feel like everything here was still worth noting, and they weren't just like simple recolors or anything like that. Moving on from this, we have MFB, and I will say, I have most of these bays, but I am missing a couple original color versions, so I'm just going to go through images to avoid the hassle of trying to figure out some kind of weird hybrid format. So first up here we have the Beta 1 machine prizes. Basically, win points to this machine, you get special bays from it. There are 2 of these, Quetzalcoatl and Mercury Anubis. Not really a fun way to get it, but it's at least interactive, I guess. Maybe it could be kind of fun, but still annoying, all things considered, and also not fun to import. MFB's big thing was releasing game-exclusive bays. You have to buy a whole game to get a special bay. While technically these are accessible like the movie bays, they're pricey. These game releases are going to be more expensive than any normal set, so it just makes them hard to get, difficult to deal with, not fun to track down. And yeah, there were 5 of these. Cyber Pegasus, Counter Leon, Bakushin Susanoo, Vulcan Harusius, and Nightmare Rex. MFB also had 1 movie exclusive bay, that being Soul Blaze, and then 2 Korokoro bays, these being kind of weird and different to the previous ones, as neither of these was actually a mail order bay. Divine Chimera is a very weird case, as this thing actually started as a lottery bay. Yes, a Korokoro lottery bay with all new parts. That is a horrid idea. This would have been by far the most egregious thing here. However, not too long after, it did get a proper re-release as a Korokoro freebie, so basically you just buy a Korokoro, it just comes with it. Well, I don't really want to count re-releases here. This one was pretty soon after, and, well, considering the shift in scale, I thought it was fair to at least mention. After this, we also had Omega Dragonis. There was a special Korokoro issue released for 4D, and this just came with it. So, again, a Korokoro freebie. You buy the magazine, you get it. Not horrible, but still not great, as these Korokoro freebies tend to be kind of harder to track down after a while, and aren't always actually released internationally. Again, more on that later. So Metal Fight had a total of 10 of these kind of bays. That's quite a few, but only 1 more than Bakuten Shoot, so I guess that's fairly consistent. Moving on to Burst, I can finally shift back to my normal setup, and we'll talk about the Rare Bay Get Battle. So we all know what the Rare Bay Get Battle is. It's an X as well. It's a gacha in an app, that's all it is. Use points or proxy buy to try and win this thing, and you have very small odds of winning these things, so it's not fun. There were 7 of them in Beyblade Burst. Well, kind of. 6 normal ones, these of course being Amatarios, Balder, Orichalcum, Shiny Amatarios, Slash Valkyrie, and Brave Solomon. Slash Valkyrie is also very much a fringe case here. It really just has the Goku weight, but it was the special gold turbo version of Slash Valkyrie as well, has its own part. It was also the only like oddball from the Rare Bay, but I also figured, I'll just count it. Again, it actually helps out X, since it inflates Burst a bit more. The real weird one here, though, is actually Dynamite Perseus, as this is actually considered a Rare Bay Get Battle prize, but the app actually shut down right around the time this thing actually came out. So it was supposed to be that, but it was kind of more of an event thing. This thing's weird, but this is how it's categorized, and yeah, there's 7 of these, that's way too many. Luckily though, like with Bakuten Shoot, outside of this main way to get special bays, there weren't too many other special releases. Aside from those 7, we have Korokoro mail order bays. We have 3 of these, Shadow Orichalcum, Dual Eclipse, and Shadow Amaterios. So yeah, buy a Korokoro, give Takutomi your money in X amount of time, and then you get your pay in the mail. It's really not a fun way to do things because even though it's technically not that expensive, these become pretty horrid in the aftermarket after not too long, since you can't really get them beyond this point. You get 3 in Burst, that's more than there should be, but at the very least, these 2 bays were based on the Rare Get Battle Bays Orichalcum and Shining Amaterios respectively, meaning that they're really just variants, but again, I'm counting them here just to inflate Burst a bit. The only genuine unique bay here is, of course, Dual Eclipse. So in total, like Metal Fight, Burst also had 10 of these special releases, and some of these are highly questionable to even count. So we had 9 Pocket and Shoot bays, 10 Metal Fight bays, and 10 Burst bays in this format. Now let's talk about X. So starting us off with Beyblade X, we have the Rare Get Battle bays, since unfortunately this system did come back for Beyblade X, much to everyone's dismay. And so far we've gotten 3 prizes, kind of. We'll talk about the other one in a minute here. But we of course have Cobalt Drake, Aeropegasus, and Valkyrie Bolt. All bays that have become legendary because of how hard they are to get. And yeah, they're not fun to get. The aftermarket on these tends to be pretty horrific. It's just a bad time overall. Then we have Mammoth Tusk. This is very much an oddball release. And while yes, I know the blade is technically a variant, it is still a unique motif, still something that collectors would want to get. So I'm counting it. But this was originally released as something you'd get in the Beyblade Park exhibit, but a couple months later it was brought to the Rare Get Battle, though it was a lot easier to win than the other 3. Most recolors are a lot easier to win, this was given kind of that status, so this is by far the easiest one to win, or at least it was when it was active, but it's still an annoying release to get regardless. Moving on to Korokoro, we have our 1 Korokoro freebie, Phoenix Feather. If you bought a certain volume back in 2023, you got the Phoenix Feather blade with it. Fairly simple, but again, the aftermarket on this thing can get a little bit weird because, well, it was technically a special release, and I'm sure over time this will just get worse. Moving on to the actual Korokoro bays here, we have the Korokoro mail order bays. These are not fun to get. You have Crot Crunch, Samurai Steel, and Orochi Cluster. The first 2, again, technically variants, not fun to get, but Orochi Cluster is actually the inspiration for this video. I had this video in mind actually a few months back, I opted to not make it, but after seeing Orochi Cluster I figured, you know what, I'm making it. The market on this thing is absolutely horrific right now, because they only released it through a magazine. You had to pre-order it, came out eventually, you can't get more, and because people think it's good, well, guess what? Now it's like $100+ anywhere you look. It's really, really bad. No one's having fun trying to get this thing. It's just rare for the sake of it. Locking parts behind things like this is just really, really annoying, and borderline underhanded in my opinion. We also have a couple of game exclusives in Beyblade X, these being Shinobi Knife and Leon Fang. Shinobi Knife being another variant. Leon Fang's weird. You could argue this isn't the main Leon Fang and it's a recolor, but it was the first ever release of Leon Fang, and right now, the only way to get it in Japan, so I'm counting it. They're game releases, they're just very expensive. Again, not really enjoyable to get. And lastly, we have Wyvern Hover. Wyvern Hover was released through the DMM lottery to the A prize. There's also the last prize, which has a special recolor of it, but still. Only way to get Wyvern Hover in Japan is through this special merchandise lottery. It's technically not overly rare, but again, Wyvern Hover, it's a good blade, so this thing gets scalped, because that's just what happens when you do stuff like this. And also, we already had random boosters, random booster selects, and the Rare Get Battle. Do we really need a 4th method of gacha? Especially for unique parts like Wyvern Hover? Why? So yeah, this is another really annoying release to deal with. And there's everything from Beyblade X. We have 11 special releases. That's more than any other gen. And you can say, well, Metal Fight had a lot in Season 2. All of Burst's, Korokoro bays were earlier in the gen technically as well, so maybe they'll slow down. But even if they slow down, even if we only get like 4 more special releases somehow, it's still a lot more than the other gens. Again, we've already beaten everything else, and we're not even 3 years into Beyblade X yet. I think this is a pretty clear issue, and Takutomi's just gonna keep throwing out more of them. Like, it's only been getting worse. Like, these 2 here were both from 2023, and then these 3 were from 2024. This one, like, barely, but still. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from 2025, and then also Orochi Cluster is technically a 2026 release, and we're probably going to get more of them this year. Even if they slow down, again, we've already beaten every other gen, we're just adding on at that point. Now, to cover a couple things, because I know some people might be, skeptical on this being like an actual issue. First up, Hasbro. This entire middle row here actually released from Hasbro first originally, and so did Wyvern Hover. That's great. but that doesn't really help people who have Takratomi as, their distributor. Like, I live in the US, so for me, well, yeah, the blades themselves are easier to get. But if you're in Japan, I think these 3 bays aren't too bad to get. Still have to import them, it's not great. But these 2 bays originally released in sets. They're not going to be easy to get. You're better off just getting the Takratomi versions, and they're just going to be expensive anyway. Also from Hasbro, we have Lianfeng and Phoenix Feather. These have released, I believe, both as starters. Great. But we still don't have any word on Orochi Cluster. That one is still a real possibility, but as of now, nothing. And then the 3 Rare Bay Get Battle Bays. We don't have any of them. And it's not like in previous gens they released everything either. Look at Soul Blaze or Dual Eclipse. Never had Hasbro releases. So Hasbro is going to be great for people who, have Hasbro as their distributor because they get some of these bays for much, much cheaper. But for those who don't have Hasbro, well, you can maybe import them. That could work. But if Hasbro decides to release one of these in a set or something, well, it's going to be a lot to import. And also, yeah, Hasbro just doesn't always release all of them, so you're still not really getting bailed out entirely. And the other thing, what about re-releases? Surely some of these bays will get re-released or have already been re-released, but I don't think that matters entirely. In Beyblade X, one of the driving costs of these special bays have been, well, how good they are. Again, Orochi Cluster really isn't any different than Crot Crunch or Samurai Steel in how it's released. I got both of these for $20 each, discounting shipping, but still. It wasn't really a whole lot, whereas Orochi Cluster, I got it for $80, again, no shipping included with that. And it's actually gotten a lot worse since then. And of course, Wyvern Hover is also pretty abysmal to buy because, well, it's good. I think you could look at things like Cobalt Drake or Valkyrie Volt. Cobalt Drake was a 38-gram blade when it released. It's also possible that they'll just nerf it when they re-release it like they do with Cobalt Drake, but even if they don't, or even if they get like a slight buff, there's a good chance that the part won't even be that good anymore. Like, Cobalt Drake kind of just got destroyed by Phoenix Wing's release a few months later. So when you got Cobalt Drake's re-release almost a year after Phoenix Wing, well, who cares? You're probably not going to use it anyway. And looking at Valkyrie Volt, Emperor Might kind of destroyed its value. So now a re-release isn't really necessary. I guess that's kind of a good thing. You could argue the same with Cobalt Drake because, it doesn't feel like as big of a missing piece in the meta anymore. But when the parts are finally made accessible, well, it doesn't really feel as good. If you wanted the Valkyrie lock chip in particular, or the Volt Blade in particular, well, by the time they come out, the meta's already moved on. I get that Beyblade X doesn't have horrible power creep, but a lot of parts do eventually fall off. Well, unless if you're like absolute top tier, like, Wizard Rod or Aero Pegasus, but still. And speaking of, Aero Pegasus is actually a good example of a re-release. It's been like a year and a half, that's way too long, but it's still a very, very good blade, so getting a re-release is helpful, but it just feels way too late. And this is all just based on meta stuff. Another big aspect of Beyblade is collecting, and yeah, these are all abysmal to try and collect. An Aero Pegasus re-release doesn't help if you want the original one. Yeah, it'll probably bring down Aero Pegasus's value, but it's still going to be very expensive. It was very sought after for a long time. The value will come down, but it's not going to completely tank or anything. It's just going to be a very hard bay to get forever. So while re-releases and Hasbro do help, I don't think they're like a huge, perfect solution, or even that good of a solution if you're trying to collect stuff. I guess Hasbro kind of is, but if they don't release something, which they sometimes don't, then yeah, it's just going to be a horrible time. Anyway, I think that's about it for this video. It's a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while. I just decided to hold off because I wasn't sure if it was entirely necessary, but after seeing Orochi Cluster and how its price has been, yeah, it does feel kind of necessary. They've been having way too many of these special releases. They're just not fun to get. Will they stop? Probably not. Will they slow down? I can hope, but we'll have to wait and see. So anyways, that's all for this video, so thanks for watching, and bye-bye.